This is part two, continuing off of where I left off in part one. Next episode will be the conclusion, and that'll probably come out before the 20th.
So, Project Bluebeam was a conspiracy that made its rounds decades ago, and it was supposedly, when I brought up the New World Order earlier, this would be the plan to establish the New World Order. And while I do not think Project Bluebeam has really any credibility, so really at all, the ideas it puts forward, I think, have some merit. So it has multiple stages, and the purpose of Project Bluebeam is to create bring about a new age religion, and also while simultaneously abolishing old religions. Step one requires the breakdown of all archaeological knowledge. This will apparently be accomplished by faking earthquakes at precise locations around the planet. Fake new discoveries at these locations will finally explain to all people the error of all fundamental religious doctrines, specifically Christian and Muslim doctrines. So think of Planet of the Apes, where the main character in Planet of the Apes finds archaeological remains which prove that human civilization predated ape civilization, which was heretical to the apes. And then it goes on and says, this makes sense to some degree. If you want to thoroughly usurp current way of thinking, you need to completely discredit and destroy it before putting forward your own. However, religious belief is notoriously resilient to things like facts. The Shroud of Turin is an example that it is still believed by many to be a genuine Shroud of Jesus, as opposed to the medieval forgery that it has been conclusively shown to be. Prayer studies to show how difficult it is to shift religious conviction with mere observational fact. Indeed, many theologians avoid making falsifiable claims or place belief somewhere specifically beyond observation. To aid this, so what finds could possibly fundamentally destroy Christianity and Islam almost overnight and universally over the globe? Probably nothing, yet it is only step one in an increasingly ludicrous set of events that Project Bluebeam predicts will occur. So this, we can't really find the best source, so what we're reading is, it'll go over it and then it kind of gives like a criticism. So what do you think about step one of destroying current religious belief overnight? Can you hear me?
I don't think people would. I don't think it would work.
People are very set in their belief. I think if you got the media on board, maybe.
Yeah, I think literally you could
massive psyop if it was even possible.
Even the most powerful psyop ever, would only make people believe what they believe even harder. I don't know how you could get people to change their beliefs about God and religion. There's literally no way to make people change their mind.
Well, we have artifacts that cast doubt on most established religion. You could go back to early Israelite mythology and you could make the claim that because Yahweh was a part of a pantheon, that the Canaanite pantheon, that would make Israelite religion and then Judaism false, which would eventually make Christianity and Islam false, because the claim of there is one and only God would be false because Yahweh has roots in a pantheon. You could make that claim, and there's archaeological evidence and writings that would support that. Although there are reasons people go against that assertion, so people will still provide. And there are lots of archaeological artifacts always coming up that they're always met with a lot of skepticism. And usually,
I do think it's pretty clear. I do think it's pretty clear that with modern evidence and science, we know the age of the Earth isn't 6,000 years old. We know there wasn't a global flood. We know these things as facts. We know we know animals evolve. We know about evolution. We know all these things, and people still believe what they believe.
Well, with each of these criticisms, there's always a response. There's always apologetic responses, or sometimes there are legitimate responses. But people approach these things in their own way. So having one unified artifact to completely completely change modern thinking when it comes to religion isn't really possible, because you could claim that Charles Darwin proved against all of Genesis, but people will come up with reasons why it does still work. People will think about it however they want, obviously. So I agree with this kind of criticism that it'd be really hard to just undermine everyone's beliefs overnight. So step two of Project Bluebeam they have a gigantic space holographic show with three-dimensional holographic laser projections. So basically, just a worldwide rave party overnight that are beamed all over the planet, and the projections will take the shape of whatever deity is most prominent in that culture. So in India it would be Vishnu, and then in Israel it'd be Yahweh. Well, I guess Yahweh, God the Father, and all look the same. So I guess it'd just be like Vishnu, and then God the Father, and then maybe some minor religions, and then they all merge into one God, which is the Antichrist, and that's the new deity that people are supposed to worship under the New World Order.
I think if it did merge with like Vishnu, then all the Christians would immediately say it's the devil causing the projections, and then
Well,
not
don't
believe.
forget, some Hindus believe that Jesus was an avatar of Vishnu, and there are some Hindus who have all-encompassing beliefs regarding Christianity and Abrahamic religions and just religion as a whole, claiming that all of them are a fragment of the truth. Christians do not share this sentiment. Like you said, if they saw the Christian God merging with Vishnu, they would probably assume it's the work of the devil.
But maybe it would work in India. I didn't realize that. I'm like, yeah, I've heard that before. Some Hindus incorporate Jesus into like their pantheon. Maybe like this could work in a polytheistic.
Well, the thing
nation.
is, with monotheism, you can't really like have like any sort of crossover. But so there's eclectic and reconstructionist paganism. Reconstructionist paganism is you're trying to reconstruct individual cults from back in the day. So you're trying to reconstruct like for example, Germanic gods. You want to reconstruct the Germanic pantheon, and you want to worship that. You want to reconstruct the Hellenistic pantheon, Roman pantheon. You want to worship those. But if you're pagan, you can accept a god within a certain pantheon. What stops you from also believing in some Egyptian gods too? I mean, if there's multiple gods and there's no set limit, then who says the other pantheons aren't correct too? So it's not uncommon for pagans to believe in gods of multiple cultures. If they're eclectic pagans, that's the difference. Eclectic pagans will accept gods between different cultures. Reconstructionist pagans will try and reconstruct individual spiritual traditions in antiquity.
Whoa.
So
That's why they're trying to push paganism. And that's why the woke left is pushing paganism, so that people are more likely to accept Project Bluebeam. Because I don't think it would ever work on a mono. It would never work on a monotheist. But if they were a pagan, it'd be more. There we go.
Or
the conspiracy's been exposed.
Or just hear me out. Maybe Christians have persecuted pagans. Oh, Christians and Muslims have persecuted pagans for thousands of years, and they're just barely beginning to heal. Maybe, no, I think I'm wrong. I think they're just trying to get Project Bluebeam off the ground. You're right. Step 3 is telepathic electronic two-way communication. It involves making people think their God is speaking to them through telepathy, projected into the head of each person using extreme low-frequency radio waves. The book goes...
Like from
what?
Facility in Alaska. What was it called?
Is that the Black Pyramid in Alaska with like, the tall aliens underground?
Oh, the research laboratory where they zap the ionosphere. They'll say they use it to control people's minds, but they just use it to like measure radiation in the atmosphere.
Subsonic frequencies, we're going to have to do...
We're going to have to do a whole episode on that.
Yeah, stuff like the Despair Code, tests in the Middle East. It gets complicated. Or subliminal messaging and advertising, or Luciferian and occult imagery in logos, that kind of crap. The book goes to some lengths to describe how this would be feasible, including a claim that ELF thought projection caused the depressive illness of Michael Kokakis' wife, Kitty. I'm pretty sure that's the guy who wrote this. So, what do we think about that? Is that plausible? I think they.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's possible or not. Even if it was possible, if a Christian was sitting there and then all of a sudden he started hearing voices in his head telling him that Jesus isn't real and to worship the Antichrist, he'd assume it's a demon. And if he was a good Christian, he'd ignore it.
This is exactly what they've been warned against. The idea that according to Christians, they are constantly being tempted by Satan on the daily anyways. So what's the difference? The difference is that the government is aiding Satan. That's the only difference.
The government is literally doing the job of Satan, and like the job of the Christian is to
Satan gets one day off because the U.S. government takes over. Yeah,
just this once.
Yeah, but I don't think this would really work either. I think it might fool some people who are susceptible to that kind of thing. But it's also
it didn't work in Cuba though.
Would it work on who?
It worked in Cuba.
It wouldn't work in Cuba, or it would?
It didn't work in Cuba when they tried it.
Yeah, they already tried that in Cuba. And so during Project Mongoose, I don't know if they either tried it or they just thought about doing it. They were going to stage the resurrection of Jesus Christ in Cuba as a ploy to get them to denounce communism. But it didn't work, or they decided against it, one of the two. Then
I can't remember.
All right, so Step 4 has 3 parts. Making humanity think an alien invasion is about to occur in every major city. This is why people started talking about Project Bluebeam during the New Jersey drones, but that's kind of silly. Just, that would mean they skipped 3 steps to get to Stage 4, which is the alien invasion.
That's the plan. They're pulling a fast one on us. Actually, the order is in reverse.
Or maybe the Step 3 was actually over TikTok, and then Step 2 was... and Step 1 and 2 were skipped. But Step 3 was just short form content. Instead, Step 4 was in New Jersey.
And then Step 1 and 2 will be after Step 4. It'll be like Star Wars.
Yeah. And then make the Christians think the rapture is about to happen. I mean, it's pretty easy to fool evangelicals that the rapture is going to happen. And the rapture isn't based in Scripture at all. I mean, I was already talking about the Book of Revelation. The rapture is not in the Book of Revelation. The Antichrist is not mentioned once in the Book of Revelation. The Antichrist is mentioned in the letters of John, and he's referring to the Gnostics, specifically the Docetists, who thought that Jesus was a hologram and didn't actually come in the flesh. And then Step 3 of Step 4 is a mixture of electronic and supernatural forces, allowing the supernatural forces to travel through fiber optics, coax power and telephone lines to penetrate all electronic equipment and appliances that will, by then, all have special microchips installed. All right, so this kind of gets into chaos magic, chaos sigils, and binding sigils in electronics. Some people think that electronics have sigils engraved in them, and sigils are basically just like symbols that can be used to console angels and demons. There's even a sigil for God. There's
You could do that and nobody would know. Like you could carve the sigils in there and nobody would fucking know.
Yeah,
because like you can carve like nanometer wide like traces into like these diodes, so they have like thousands of like capacitors on millions, billions. Like you could sneak tons of sigils onto a circuit and nobody would know.
That's a fear. So within Solomonic mystical tradition, and within Solomonic magic, we will probably cover Testament of Solomon soon. In the Testament of Solomon gets a ring with the seal of God on it, which helps him bind demons. Basically kind of like Pokemon. So sigils, seals, these have precedence in, Christianity, mainly Christianity, but then around the 20th century is when chaos magic starts, which is more of a psychological aspect of these sigils, and that's what really starts interpreting these sigils as associative. And it's speculative whether they are, and within chaos magic, it's speculative and ambiguous if it is actually metaphysical or if it is just psychological. But the conspiracy is that these sigils are put into chips, and no one knows because it's just in the electronics. No one can tell, and that all technology binds demons. But that's just me giving a meta commentary on this. It's all kind of...
So was this like conspiracy made when fiber optic cables were new? Why did they specifically mention fiber optic cables?
This might be just the website inserting it into there. Like I said, we can't really get the best source. Yeah. Oh man, that sounds... I mean, fiber optic cables are kind of sketchy. The CIA, or no, NSA, probably CIA too, just any alphabet agency can put a wire tap onto your fiber optic cables and just like just monitor all your traffic. And it's even worse than internet service provider being tapped because it's directly onto the cable itself. So that's pretty sketchy. Oh, and sharks...
Just put a tap on your Wi-Fi router and just like monitor all traffic directly from your Wi-Fi
I would never
router.
It's like, and not to mention sharks' favorite food is fiber optic cables in the oceans.
I love eating fiber optic cables.
Oh, man. So Yeah, yep. Chaos will break out, and people will finally be willing, perhaps even desperate, to accept the New World Order. The techniques used in the fourth step are exactly the same, used in the past in USSR to force people to accept communism. A device has apparently already been perfected that will lift enormous numbers of people, as in rapture, alien abductions, or tests of this device. Project Bluebeam proponents believe psychological response preparations have already been made. Monast having claimed that 2001: A Space Odyssey. And by the way, I hear a lot of conspiracies about 2001: A Space Odyssey because it was made by Stanley Kubrick, the guy who supposedly directed the moon landing, and he also made the movie Eyes Wide Shut, which is crosses over with some conspiracy stuff, especially the apparently 25 minutes of Eyes Wide Shut was taken out of the movie, and people always theorize that's where it exposes the New World Order and the Illuminati and the Bohemian Grove, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, all those. I don't believe it personally. Monas having claimed the 2001: Space Odyssey, Star Wars, and Star Trek series all involve an invasion from space and all nations coming together. The first two don't. The third is peaceful contact, and that Jurassic Park propagandist evolution in order to make people think God's words are lies. It's funny he mentioned Star Trek because we'll later see why that's funny. But
my Discovery Institute.
Jurassic Park being a psyop against the Bible is just insane. I mean, Jurassic Park is
written by Discovery Institute. That's crazy.
Yeah. I can believe that a lot of movies are psyops. Jurassic Park, I don't think so. It's more of a call to action. Not a call to action by the government, I should say. The new one...
It's a psyop against full science.
Yeah. We're according to Monast. The book detailed the theory. In the 1994 lecture, Monast detailed what would happen afterward. All people will be required to take an oath to Lucifer with a ritual initiation to enter the New World Order. Resistors will be categorized as follows. Christian children will be kept for human sacrifices or sexual slaves. Prisoners to be used in medical experiments. Prisoners to be used as living organ banks. Healthy workers in slave labor camps. Uncertain prisoners in the International Re-Education Center. Thence to repent on television and then learn to glorify the order. It's literally a 1984 reference. Re-education, that's basically Ministry of Love, they had the big prison with Room 101, and they have to go on television and then apologize and then acknowledge their crimes.
It's also a China reference because they have literal re-education camps. That's what they're called.
Yeah, they have those for Muslims. It's really sad if you look into it. And their excuses are ridiculous. They say, "Oh, well, if we let them free, then they have dangerous thoughts which will eventually evolve into terrorism." You don't know that. You're just saying that because you're just racist and Islamophobic.
The reason they're doing it is because they want to build a highway through their sacred tribal land, and they live there. So what they're doing is just killing them all so they can build the road. In the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yep. The International Education Center and as yet unknown seventh classification. He couldn't even come up with a seventh. I'm sure he wanted that, seven. Because 7 is like a divine number. He just couldn't even think of a seventh, so he just put an as of yet unknown seventh classification. Just to get the number. It's stupid.
He's just it's like the quantum physicists that know there has to be another quantum particle, but they don't know what it is. They haven't discovered it yet.
Yeah. And then, alright, so here's actual source of the theory. Joel Engel's book, Gene Roddenberry, The Myth and Man Behind Star Trek, was released in 1994, shortly before Monast's lecture on Project Bluebeam. In May 1975, Gene Roddenberry accepted an offer from Paramount to develop Star Trek into a feature film and moved back into his old office on the Paramount lot. His proposed story told of a flying saucer hovering above the Earth was programmed to send down people who look like prophets, including Jesus Christ. All the steps of the conspiracy theory were in the unmade mid-1970s Star Trek film script by Roddenberry, which were then recycled for the Star Trek Next Generation episode Devil's Due, broadcast in 1991. I guess you're going to have to watch the episode. I've never really seen Next Generation that much. I mean, I do like a lot of 90s sci-fi shows. I think I started watching Firefly. I think that's really good. I've seen some of Babylon 5. That was pretty good. X-Files, I don't really know if that's really science fiction. I mean, it kind of is. That one's really good. I haven't seen Farscape. That one looks interesting. Next Generation, couldn't really get into it, but I like it more than the 1966 series, though, personally. There was no evidence of deliberate fraud on Monast's part, given that his head was quite thoroughly full of squirrels and confetti. That's just what the article I'm reading says. by this time. It's entirely plausible that he thought this was a revelation of secret information in a guy's safer propagation. However, the actual source was so obvious that even other conspiracy theorists noticed. They confidently state that it was obvious that monarchs had been fed deceptive information by the CIA, of course. So I think it's interesting they say that he may have not inherently been lying. There was one case of a woman who was watching a movie or an interview that involved rape, and then she was later raped in her home. And then when it's hard to really to remember physical characteristics of a rapist after being raped. So the only person she could remember was the person she saw in the movie / interview, and then that person was almost arrested after she just convinced herself. I think you've told me a similar story. So she wasn't lying, but she just got her facts completely wrong because she was subconsciously influenced by something else that she saw earlier, which led her to just bring up the wrong guy who raped her. You have any thoughts on that?
We talked about this before.
Yeah.
I sent like a TED talk, I think, about it.
Say?
Yes, and so entire details can change. And this happens a lot in court cases and stuff. People will be remembering something, then like the jury will mention something, and then the person will like re-remember the event, but like it'll be different, and like they're convinced they're telling the truth. Like entire details, entire people and like locations will change just like from like being mentioned other details.
All right, interesting. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen accounts of that. All right, I think that's it for Project Blue Beam, and I do remember a few other details not listed here. He was the guy who proposed Project Blue Beam was very paranoid. He homeschooled his kids, and he thinks that, and the government took away his kids, and he claims that was because the Canadian government took away his kids, and he claims that was because they were trying to discredit him, they were after him, and like I said, all the details were in an unproduced Star Trek script, and the plan isn't really that good, but I do think the ideas are interesting. In cases, as a psyop, I think a similar process could be followed. Not the same process, but a contingency plan similar, because the government has a lot of contingency plans just in place, like hypothetical ones, like what if this country attacks that country? What if this outbreak happens? I can kind of see something similar to this existing somewhere, but not quite like this. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it's not very creative. I think the guy who like came up with the plan wasn't thinking broad enough. We're not going to create a new religion and make people worship it. We're going to like replace religion with a different thing that will like consume everybody's minds.
In 1984, they abolished religion, and you could claim that they worshipped Big Brother, but I don't really think they really saw him as a deity. They saw him as a political figurehead. So, but government and God can go hand in hand in terms of devotion. There's a different kind of devotion. I don't think religious devotion is really in the best interest of the New World Order. I think they would benefit more from abolishing religion and then having that devotion turned straight towards the New World Order itself or their figureheads in terms of patriotism. I think patriotism would be more powerful.
Or maybe not even just patriotism, just like turn their like devotion towards like consumption of like media and like consuming like content and like just rotting their minds.
Oh, so the idea is it used to be the government would go against us. They would undermine us, but now people undermine themselves. How many websites have you gone to where it says accept our cookies and you just press yes? I mean, you're undermining your own rights at that point, but they're telling you you're benefiting from doing that to yourself. So now it used to be the government undermined us, but now we undermine ourselves. The government doesn't need to go against us overtly, because we'll just do it willingly for the slightest benefit.
That's what I think is interesting. Like, this is clearly written by somebody who wasn't like in our time. He wasn't thinking that far ahead. He didn't like conceive of how bad it's going to be.
Yeah, and I can't remember the exact thinker who came up with that, but there was a YouTube channel called Security Cameraman. So let me just make sure that's the Security Cameraman YouTube channel. Surveillance Cameraman. Okay, so the whole point of Surveillance Cameraman is he would just go up to random people and just start recording them. No elaboration, no reaction, just walk up to a random person, start recording them. They'd flip out. They'd always get mad, tell them to stop, tell them to go away. But he just wouldn't. And then one time, someone said, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "Have you ever walked into a grocery store?" I said, "Yeah." Was there security cameras? He said, "Yeah." He said, "No big deal." Referring to himself, because he's recording them. So what if he's recording them? There's security cameras everywhere. We live in a surveillance state. So I don't really approve of his methods, but it shows a complete double standard. No one's okay with this guy recording them, but then, all these companies are recording you all the time. But we do it willingly because we just want to go get our groceries. We want to go, we want the idea of security, but it's not really about security. It's about watching us. It's about controlling us. And
do it because we have no choice. There's no way to avoid it.
But people
it's
don't
like
think
they
about
say
it.
Yeah, when people have the choice, like a choice that's easier to be private, they normally would take, like, if there's a button that says "Do not track" that pops up, people will almost always click "Do not track." But like they're not willing to go out of their way to avoid and like look for privacy and protect themselves. And it's not that people don't want to be private and don't care. It's just that they think they don't have an option.
Yeah. But here's something I was thinking of. If the government came out and said, "We are always watching you," people would be outraged. But if, people just know, "Oh yeah, these companies are watching me," and they don't really think that very far ahead, knowing that footage is probably redirected back to the NSA, that kind of thing. They don't really think that far ahead. They just think it's national security. But if the government did come out and say we're watching you, they would be outraged. But we undermine ourselves. That's the point. Do you have any more